Hello everyone, I hope you're well. Welcome to my YouTube channel. So yesterday I added this video to YouTube for the Thrinchies 29, what was it? I always forget the number, 26, 27, 28, 29 and 30 Thrinchies. I added this and those Thrinchies have inspired me to create a card. But I'm going to use some vintage tones. So I've got a 4x6" card, Pink Frog Super Smooth 300 GSM card with a black mat. Again, Pink Frog, and that's 4 1/4 by 6 1/4, and a 5x7 card blank. And I've got all these in the shop. So let's just take our card, and I'm just going to rub over with an anti-static bag. Let's just put that light on. So I'm just going to rub over it with an anti-static bag, just so that, well, in case I've touched the card too much, so that embossing doesn't stick anywhere I don't want it to. Or that's the plan. Take my acrylic block. I've just put one on the floor. Honestly, it's going to be one of those days, isn't it, where I nudge the camera, where I drop things on the floor. So I'm going to use the Auricula stamp again, TE2. So let's take this again. And I think I'll just give that a little bit of a wipe on the back, because it's very grubby. You can just wash them if you wish, but it's a bit grubby, so I'm just cleaning that up a little bit, just so that sticks. And then I'm going to use my Versamark ink. So let's take our Versamark ink, and just like with the Thrinchie, I'm just making sure that I add plenty of that Versamark ink. So lots of tapping. Just to make sure that we've got plenty of ink. And where shall I start the first one? Shall I start that one here? So again, I'm just going to have the florals in the background, but it created such a beautiful background on the Thrinchie. But that was obviously with watercolours and bright colour scheme. I'm doing it a little bit different this time. So I don't rush the process, I just give that time just to grab hold of the surface. And guess what? No copy of paper. There we go. Got my copy of paper. Take our embossing powder. I think I need a little bit more white embossing powder. Lovely. Doesn't matter how many times I do that, I still drop little bits onto the surface. So again, just repeat the process. Lots of inking, because that stamp's quite detailed, and it's a really good size. So I think we'll add this one here. And we don't want to just add whole images, we want to add parts of the image as well. You don't have to press on the text part if you don't wish, just so that it's a little bit more random. or you can rub the text away before you stamp with it. It's entirely up to you. And I'm just adding that embossing powder because visually I can see exactly where I'm going, and it just helps. So now I'm going to add parts of the image as well, because you don't just want the whole image. You want it to look a little bit more sort of, so it's not sort of rigid and just the whole image the whole time. That's why I've added one whole one here, so I can add parts of the image as well. And I always tend to ink the whole thing because it's so much easier. So let's add part of the image there. Beautiful morning here. I bet a lot of you are making the most of the weather and getting in that garden. So you can see I don't sort of rush the process of lifting the stamp up. You want to get a good impression because you actually want to see that that is a floral. You don't want it so random that it doesn't even look like a floral. There we go. So that's it. We're creating a lovely background now. And I ink the whole stamp because it's far easier than trying to get just a little part of it, because you're bound to miss a little bit. So it's far easier doing it this way. So let's just give that a really good inking. And then we'll add a little bit of that image here. So it's nice just to have it coming off the page as well. I just find that more sort of pleasing to the eye if it comes off the page as well. There we go. Just bring in our embossing again. And because I've added that anti-static bag, it's working really nicely. And just so that you can see, we've got the embossing on there. I will add little bits to this area as well. Just to give us that pleasing background. So let's start with this one right at this edge here. And you don't have to press too hard, you can just leave it on there, as long as you don't take all the fingers off, because you don't want to take all the fingers off so that you don't get any wobble on your stamp. So just again, repeat the process and just allow that just to, so that the ink's got time to make the impression on the card, and then you get less frustrations. It's just about a little bit of patience. Lovely. So just a few more spaces to fill on our card, and then I'll lift this up before I mount it just so that you can see where everything is. And the only reason you can get frustrated with your stamping is if you don't just follow some simple sort of processes. That will make it a lot easier for you. So let's have that there. And if you lift it up too quickly, that's when you don't get a good image, because you're not giving the ink time to do its work. Or you're lifting fingers, both lots off the acrylic block, and then you get that wobble. Just keep some fingers in place just so that it's stable. And then it works a lot easier for you. So let's just sprinkle this. Now I'm getting a lovely, lovely background. And I'm just going to add a little bit to one of the sides. And it looks like I'm going to get a delivery, so I may just have to answer the door because I'm on my own. Typical, typical when I'm doing a video. So just inking the whole of that stamp. And I just want a little bit of that stamp just here as well, because it's nice to have a little bit just on that edge that doesn't have to be the whole floral. It can just be part of that floral. And we'll just wipe our non-stick craft sheet. Whoops. I'll hold this up for you. For me, it looks a little more aesthetically pleasing when you've got it sort of coming off the edge as well. So let's just give this little bit of a non-stick craft sheet a clean, because you've got that sticky ink on there. And the reason I did the video is because the delivery was due tomorrow. And of course, it's going to come today when I've started videoing. You couldn't make it up. Right. So let's bring this in so you can see where I've got all that embossing. I love how it comes off the edge here. There we go. Just so you can see that. So let's give this a little bit of a dry. There's a few bits of debris, which is not as in stray embossing powder. It's actually bits from my embossing powder that's got into the bottle. I'm not going to mess with that, or else I'll create gaps. Just going to melt our embossing powder now until you get that glossy finish. And the minute it just turns that, you get that glossy white, and then move the card or my heat tool just so that I don't heat the same area over and over. And I'm just lifting that up just so that I can see easily. Still never tire of seeing that embossing move and melt as you go along with your heat tool. And you can see I just move that card as I'm melting the embossing powder. Just the last one now. There we go, I just missed a bit there. There we go. If we lift that up, you can see we've got all that glossy embossing, just so that you can see that. Now, don't go in with your ink whilst it's warm, because you may as well just give it a couple of minutes just to cool down and not go in too soon. Now, I still don't think I've caught that little bit there. Like, how can you miss such a tiny bit? Oh, quite easy. So, look, it's got all embossing powder on there, pour stamp. So let's just move that out of the way. There we go. And I'm going to bring in my Brayer that I use for my inks, but I'm just going to wipe over the Brayer just in case I've got some ink on there, and I haven't, so it's absolutely fine. I don't think I've got a piece of spare card, so let's bring in a couple of ATCs, because these were the ATCs from yesterday. Whoops, oh dear me. That have now dried. And these are the ATCs that I created yesterday, and I've now got some lovely backgrounds that I can use for a card, which I can use them as ATCs, or I can use them on a card in 3 pieces like this. So it works quite nicely. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with Vintage Photo. And I'm going to use my Vintage Photo and my Brayer. I'm just going to pick up that ink. I use a Speedball Brayer. I've used them for a long time. I just love them. And I've got the ink just in the middle there. And then what I'm going to do is sort of start off the page and just come in, bringing the colour into the project. So you don't think there's much ink on there, but if you keep coming down, there is lots of ink on there, but it just doesn't look like there is. Again, pick up that ink, and I'm just going to bray it across my card. A little bit more. Let's turn the card around. And you can see how much ink there is on the non-stick craft sheet, which I'll be able to pick up with my ATCs. So we've got the vintage photo, which is, it's got some warmth to that colour. I'm going to take the ground espresso, which is more of a sort of, it's a dark brown, but sort of on the cooler side, if you know what I mean, not quite as warm in colour. So I'm just going to go around and just brayer that on. And if you sort of add light layers and lift and flick, you're doing like a wheelie, you just get a lovely blend of that colour. And as like anything I do, I like to add layers. So let's just add layers of that colour. And then I'm going to bring a little bit more darkness around the edge. There we go. And you think there's nothing on the brayer, but there is. There's still ink on the brayer, and I've still got lots of ink here. So let's pick this up just on some of my ATCs. We may as well have 3, because then when I want some creative time, I can pick these up and I've already got beautiful backgrounds, so it works quite nicely. So I'm just going to leave those on one side, and now I've got these beads of ink here, and I'm just going to mop them onto my background. I'm just going to pick these up onto the background. You can continue lifting that colour, drying your ATCs, and then adding that colour back onto your ATCs. So what I'm going to do then is just spritz my card with water. And I've then got Salvage Patina Distress Oxide. You don't have to have the spray, you can just use the ink if you wish. It's entirely up to you. I'm going to add, and the reason I'm doing it this way is I don't want to add too much initially. So I'm just adding a little bit of the Salvage Patina. That way you can see I've got some on here. So I'm just going to add a little bit of water. Let's add some water to these, and then let's pick the Salvage Patina up on those ATCs, because it'll just add wonderful touch to the ATCs. And again, I've then got ready-made backgrounds. So my card is quite wet now, and I just added dots of that Salvage Patina because I wanted to see what it looks like, and I don't want to just spray it in just a clump. So I'm just adding, I love the colour and I love how it goes with the brown, but I don't want to spray it and then just add with a clump of the colour in one space. So I'm doing it this way because it's just a little bit gentler in how I'm adding it. So again, I'm going to add a little bit of water just so that that does its thing. I've got a little bit of over spritz, over flick. Didn't even spritz it, Tracy, what are you talking about? So I'm going to add a little bit more of that Salvage Patina to my ATCs. so you get very little wastage then. I'm going to give this a little bit of a dry. Now, the reason I'm sort of moving my heat tool is so that I don't leave that heat on any one particular area, so that it doesn't affect the embossing, because you still want that embossing to be there. So I'm making sure it doesn't affect any one particular area of that embossing. We'll just hit it from underneath as well, just so we can straighten that card out. And I'm loving the, let's show this, just so that you can see it's got those sort of speckles in the background. So let's move this to one side. I need a scrap of the card. Have I got a scrap of card? It's funny, I've used that many scraps of card now, I've hardly got any. Because I keep picking them up to create backgrounds, so I've hardly got any. Is there one there? Yeah. I've got lots of lovely, lovely backgrounds. So we'll just push that on one side, and then I'm going to take the Auricula again. And just remember, I've still got that ink on there. I'll show you how much ink is on there in a second. Let's take that Versamark. Let's just move that wallet out of the way. So take that Versamark. I'm going to add one to a spare piece of card. So we're just adding one to a spare piece of card. There we go. Make sure we've got that the right way. And then we'll add our embossing once again, our embossing powder. I love it when you can create extra backgrounds as you're in the process. Look at the debris, look at that. I mean, what is that in my embossing powder? I mean, I have to say the embossing powder is years old, so it's no wonder really. So we'll just give that a heat. It's got a little bit of excess embossing powder on there, and it proves that the anti-static bag works. But I don't need to worry about this because this is the one that I am going to cut out. So just melting that embossing powder. Again, just turning it so I can see in the light exactly what areas I've got. There we go. Just so that you can see that. And then let's bring in the Brayer that I've not added any more ink to, and let's see if there's anything on there. Told you, didn't I? You think there's no ink on there on your brayer, but it's surprising. So let's go over with a little bit of vintage photo and just warm that up a little bit. But you do think there's nothing on there. There we go. Let's move these out of the way. And again, I've got some of that brown on there. So let's add more layers to our ATCs. And I've not dried the layers in between. I'm just picking up whatever is on there. So we'll just spritz this, and you can see where it beads. That is where the embossing powder is resisting the ink. So I'm adding a little bit more to this one that's going to be on the top. Just move that to one side a little bit. And again, you've got some ink on here. So once again, I've not dried. I'm just going to pick. And this is what happens when you don't dry it. So let me show you. Let's take this one and let's dry this. So if we dry this ATC a little bit, then when I pick up the blue, it adds another layer of that colour. So we'll just dry this ATC a little bit. I've got 3 lovely ATCs. You could even make a little book out of them. And we'll just come in and add another layer. Just means that you're not wasting that ink. So we'll just give a little bit more of a spritz, and we'll just leave that doing its thing at the moment. You can see where in my background we've got that lovely colour now. And where it's more concentrated, it's more bluey, and where I've hit it with the water, it's got those touches of green. I'm now going to add a little bit more. And what's happening is there's some paint in my lid. Let's bring some down to here. So that's why you're getting this here, because there's some of that concentrated ink in the lid. So let's bring in the ATC. Give that a dry, because now it's got a lot of wet on there. And I don't want to necessarily dilute this anymore because I've already spritzed that with water. And all that we're doing is we're creating extra backgrounds. So I'm going to give this a dry. Oh, and then we'll just take it straight through. But now it just layers that colour. Let's just get the other ATCs so that we can do that with them. Give that a dry. And then I can pick up, and it just adds more concentration to that ATC. So I'm going to dry this a little bit. And then pick up the concentrated ink, and that just gives a little bit more concentration to the ATC. I'm then going to give this a little bit of a dry. Give that a lovely dry, just on the reverse as well. So we'll just give this a little bit of a dry. Again, you don't want to sort of dry that too much because you've got that embossing on there and you do not really want to react that too much. Leave that a bit longer. This is a little bit drier than the other one. So what I'm going to do then is just take my kitchen roll and I'm just going to dab just so that I've got that brightness of the white. Use some clean kitchen towel, so using a clean area each time because you pick up that colour. So you just want a clean area each time. Just so that you pick up any ink that's just lying on the surface of that embossing, because the embossing resists the ink. So you're just picking up any that's just sitting there, just so that that pops against that background. So let's grab another clean area, not that I've got many clean areas. And let's just dab this. And that's got just sort of the lovely blue on there, just beautiful. I've dabbed the excess. Let's just give that a dry so that when I go to cut that out, it doesn't disintegrate in my hands as I go to cut that out. Well then, see, the card's got some stability now because I've dried that a little bit. And I'm just going outside that embossing. It sort of gives you a ridge to go against. So it works quite nicely. You can go further in to some of your petals if you wish. It is a lovely edge to cut against when you've got the embossing. Just cut. This out. There we go. It's just another way to colour as well. And you don't have to colour the same way each time. You can colour different ways each time. You can cut into your petals a little bit. Just because then you can sort of lift. And I like to just scrunch it a little bit, just so that it's got a little bit more sort of life when we add it. I don't want to play, do I? Yeah, I think I am going to place this here just so that you can see this. Just lovely. I'm going to grab some white cotton, and with the white cotton I sort of pull out a really long length like that and then repeat. Long length, repeat. Long length, repeat. And it just, if you pull out long lengths, it just makes it a little bit looser as you pull it out. So let's try not to reach over the camera. Biggest pair of scissors ever to cut the cotton. And then going to sort of add the loose cotton, just so that that spreads out nicely. Just push my pin flare up. It's like toothpaste. My children, even now, one of them at 28, still presses the toothpaste in the middle. Drives me mad. Absolutely mad. So I'm going to add some good dollops of pin flare. And let's just push this up again. Just so that we've got no air pockets in there. I've got so much embossing powder all over me. It's hilarious. Absolutely hilarious. So then I'm going to add this just over the top there. Like so. Just lovely. And I'm going to, where are you now? The colours. What colours have I got? I just want to see what VersaFine Claire Barley Blue, what colour? Oh yes, doesn't that go perfect? Right, so then I'm going to grab, which is in the same wallet, TE3 Fern. See, when I pull these out, I've got bits of plastic everywhere. So I'm going to grab the fern, and I've cut mine so that I've got the ferns all separate. Just because I can do. It's my fern, can do whatever we want. So I can just stamp it onto the scrap card. I'm going to take the Barley Blue. Can you see how many times I ink that? Even a stamp that's not huge, although it is a good size stamp. Doesn't matter where it goes because I'm cutting that out. Look at that in the Barley Blue. Just yummy. Yummy, yummy, yummy. I'll leave a little bit of a whiteboard on there. And I'm going to go around the fern. And I'm going to leave a little bit of a white border. I know some of you don't like fussy cutting. I adore it, and it does add so much to a project. And if you leave a little bit of a gap around these fronds, they're much easier to cut out. It works really nicely. And you can see I'm moving the card. Oh, bear with me a second, somebody's at the door. So just sing to yourself. Oh, just a sec. Just a second, folks. And just to make it worse, he's gone back to his van and packing one box at a time on the trolley. So just bear with me. I've not disappeared. I'm just taking this delivery and then I'll be back. 2 seconds. Yeah, they do. They do. Right.
That's that massive box I just thrown on top.
I bet that's
Which was light, yeah.
Yeah, typical.
You just can't fit it up.
That's lovely. Thank you very much. Brilliant. Have a good day. Bye. Ta-da, I'm back. Now, there's nobody like Tracy Evans, is there? Takes a delivery in between and doesn't edit it out. There you go. I'd rather offer inspiration than edit it out. He was a lovely gentleman, but the boxes were a bit heavy. And he wasn't going to maul them, which you can't blame him, off the van if I wasn't in. And the problem is, I have that many deliveries. I can't go out. So I have to book a slot to not book deliveries so that I can actually go out. Especially if I end up taking delivery of stamps, because that ends up loads of boxes. But this was card. So it weighs a ton, so he wasn't going to lump that off the van should I have not been in. And actually that's got some of my 5x7 packs in there. So just going around just to add my little fern. And it's sort of just in and out really. And when it gets near to the top, I just go in and out. Where it's finer. But I have to say, I adore my Pergamano scissors because they just make it so much easier. Obviously, you could use just the smaller ferns if you wanted to, but I want this biggish one. I do love this colour, this barley blue. I'm probably pronouncing that completely wrong, which is about standard for me. Beautiful colour. Really goes with my project that I've done. You can always tell when Tracy's enjoying herself because she does lots of faffing. I've got a live workshop this Saturday. We're creating a journal page and I do a faff. They'll tell you that I faff. So it's got a little bit of brown on the tips as well. And then, shall we just grab some adhesive? So I've got my adhesive. And because I've got that fine point, I can just add a few dots of adhesive just here and there. Let's just make sure some of that catches. I can also push that into the 3D pin flare. So to make it harder, I've also got the cotton, which sometimes can give you a few issues because obviously it stops you adhering your piece. But I just love the fern. So then let me just move the fern out of the way. And I'm only wiping it because there's wet ink on there so that when I lift it, I've got less ink on my fingers. So then let's grab, I'm going to take TE35, my abstract trees. I'm just going to take these little blobby bits. That's a professional term, blobby bits. I'm going to take the barley blue again. And just, shall we have two? So I'm just sort of creating an arrangement really. Let's place that back so I'm not looking for it, which is usually the case. Now, if you want to, you can add bits of twigs if you wish. You could add rolled up paper just to your arrangement as well. And that works quite nicely as well. But I love creating my own backgrounds. I love creating my own little cutout pieces because everything coordinates beautifully and seamlessly. You're not trying to match it up with colours that don't necessarily work together. So I do like to do that. There we go. So I can just add little sort of, I'm just placing these at the moment because that's what I like doing. I don't like to sort of adhere them until I'm happy with the placement. There we go. And I don't want anything that's too bulky because we've got the boldness of the flower. So I want something else that just adds to it but doesn't overpower that design. There we go. Let's just put my scissors so I can actually remember where I've placed them and we're not looking for them. So I want this sort of, yes. So now I've got my, or do I want them? No, I'm going to have it where I've just had it. So I don't have to place adhesive on every single piece of it. And I can use my scissors just to press that down a little bit. Let's add this one down here. Just gives me a little bit of movement and dimension. And everything, I don't want it sort of facing exactly the same way. Let's turn it a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. And I've got my little bits of added twiddly bits because that really adds to it, which is really nice. Let's move that out of the way. And then I'm going to take, she says, trying to reach for it. I'm going to take a little lollipop stick. Honestly, I haven't made that much of a mess and I'm still sitting here looking for my auricula. There we go. So I'm going to take, we don't need an acrylic block that big. I'm going to take the word auricula. And we're going to stamp that in black. Just so that that stands out from our background. So let's place it that side. Wonderful, wonderful. This stamp needs cleaning at the back as well because it's very well used. I'm going to add the, see, this is where I faff too much. Just going to add the auricula there. So let's just add this adhesive. Now I've got my tonic glue in this bottle. I know it's got a quick grab time. sort of going to tuck it under there. Just so that that sort of bit of foliage. And what I'm doing is I'm holding it down because there's obviously some bend in the card because we've added all that moisture. So I'm just giving it a little bit of time just to grab hold. Just so that it grabs hold. And you can tell because it soon stops moving. There we go. So I'm then going to add some wonderful white splatters. Now this is the bigger Posca pen, which is PC-5M. And you can see that I shake that so that it just makes it a little bit easier to do those splatters. Now obviously the splatters are going to take on some of that Oxide ink. There we go. Let's just wipe. Oh, nice bit of glue on there. Let's just wipe our surface just so that. Just love that. Before I add my little beard or something, I'm just going to add this to a black mat. So let's add this to the black mat. Now you can see that there is some bend in the card because I've had that moisture on there, I've embossed on there. So I like to just put some adhesive into the centre of that piece of card. So let's just get one side sort of right. And then let's remove that. We can just... So as I always say, it always tries to sort of work against you because it's got that bend in there. So all that you need to do is just keep pressing. Make sure that centre, you also press in the centre so that you don't get no bubbles in that centre area. So just keep pressing your card down. Keep pressing that down. Just so that, and if you don't want to use your fingers, you can always use some copier paper. I'm going to add some white splatters to the black anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But just give that sort of a press. Don't move your flower too much. That's better. Now you can tell it's really sort of stuck. So I'm going to wipe my fingers. I'm going to add a few more splatters now, just so that a little bit of the card is included, the black. There we go, a little bit down here, that's it. And really, it's so much easier if you let your Posca pen dry rather than trying to fight against it to stick everything down. But you know what I'm going to do. You know me off by heart now. So I'm going to add I'm going to grab the back of the copier paper just so that my card doesn't go onto a dirty surface. And then we're just going to add this here onto our card front. And obviously this will be a little bit easier because it hasn't got that moisture in the card. So it sticks a lot easier for you. But you still have to give it a few moments just for that adhesive to grab hold. Just going to give my hands a little bit of a wipe because I've got brown ink on there. I've got everything. It's a good job I've got my grubby trousers on that are gardening and working. So let's just, and you can see even though it's secured down, I still press just to make sure everything is okay, just so you can see what we've got so far. So I'm just going to add a little bird. So shall we just put some of these away, just so that we're not then hunting for them. They're supposed to be in number order, these are, but they're not. What was I looking for? A little bird. Which one do I want to use? Where's TE30? Which way do you face? Do you like how I have to judge which bird I want to have? No, you're facing the wrong way, so no. Let's grab my trusty TE32 and we'll have the little pheasant. Put that plastic back in. And which one do I want? My little hair's fallen off. I want that one. My little hair is fallen off because it's so well used. Take that acrylic block, and we need a little bit of cord. And then I want some black ink. Again, don't work over your project, which I was doing then, which is bad practice, because if then your ink pad falls onto your project, oh dear, you've ruined it. There we go. Just clean that because I picked up that black stamp. I'm then going to cut out my little pheasant. So I'm going to cut up between those legs. No pheasant was harmed in the making of this project. Now, if you're going to hide his legs, then you don't have to worry about his little scrawny legs and feet. But when I've decided I want something on there, I want my little pheasant. Because there you go, his feet are slightly hidden, so you can get away with not doing his feet. But I want him to be looking at the floral. Mine have got feet. Bless him. I don't want it sort of, no, I want it there. I want him looking at that floral, but I don't want his tail stuck down. I just want, let's tuck your feet down there. There you go. And you can just see that moving because obviously you need the adhesive to take hold. Let's just place my finger there. That's it. And it guides that in. Let's hold that upside down. Just going to grab my Posca pen, my white one, and just add a little bit of, hardly anything, just a little touch of white just to the pheasant. And then that is our little card finished. I really love that. I'm really pleased with that. If you want to, you can add more touches of white to your little pieces, she says. Come on. And you can add little touches of white, that's it, little touches of white to your fern if you wish. So it's entirely up to you if you want to add more touches of white. But that is your card finished. I think that just needs, there we go. I'm really pleased with that. I absolutely love the colours. So I hope you've enjoyed that process and you'll give that a go. So love to all, and I'll see you all soon. Bye for now.